Hey everyone, welcome to CresTV, your weekly hookup with Crestron and everything going on in the UC and collaboration industry. I'm really excited about today's show. We have our good friends from Microsoft joining us. But before I bring Tom from Microsoft out, just want to remind you, we're doing this every week for you. Please tell your friends, hit the subscribe, ring the bell notification, and tell us what you'd like to see. I'm haphazardly putting these shows together and grabbing people to talk about stuff, but I have no idea if you're interested. So do let us know in the comments if this is something that you want to hear more about and who you'd like us to get on the show. As I mentioned in that intro, on this week's show, we're talking with Microsoft about a study that they've done in conjunction with the Work Trends Index Group. And I'll bring out my guest joining me this afternoon, depending on when you're watching this. Tom, how are you doing?
Hi, Neil. How are you doing? Yeah, really good, thank you. Yeah, great to be on the show, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, very good. So Tom Hall from Microsoft. Tom, for those who don't know you, and everyone I think does in the industry, but tell us a little bit about what you do there at Microsoft.
Okay, so I've been at Microsoft now for 6.5 years, working across various different parts of the UK organisation, working with our distribution business, and then more recently, the last 4 or 5 years, working with the OEM side of the business with manufacturing and that kind of stuff at my heart. I love new tech, I love new gadgets, and then recently I've been working in the last couple of years with Crestron, helping you guys land and bring in all of your new tech. All of that stuff is, again, really why I come to work. I love what you do. Happy to be here today and talk to you about exciting MTR and Teams tech.
It's very cool. So you guys, this is a free survey you've done around hybrid work. Now, we were chatting with Nikki last week, and she said there's not enough information around this coming from Microsoft and Crestron. Can you do so? We'll put a video together. So Nikki, this video is for you. Absolutely. So you've done this survey, and we've got some slides and some graphs and some stuff. But again, just talk us through what this about and what you think when you look at hybrid work and the challenges that we're all going when we return to the office, stay at home, and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and this is for Nikki. This one's for you. But ultimately, a lot of people are in a quandary. Okay, we were working in the office 2 years ago, then we were working at home, and a lot of people are looking for that thought leadership around what does that next stage of work look like? Why are these things important? And underneath that, there's a real human layer. So what we did as Microsoft, and the report is available online. We'll make sure that everybody gets the link afterwards. But this is to kind of give that thought leadership so that people who run businesses, people who own businesses, people who work in businesses, employees can actually be armed with the right kind of knowledge and understanding that actually they can ask for things to change, things to improve, things to what's the company's strategy for hybrid? How do you get to a place where you as a company or an employee can actually have that conversation with people? This is where that information's kind of coming from. So what we did was we actually worked with the Work Trend Index. They surveyed 30,000 people across 31 countries. Wow. So this is real. This is a big pot of people. This is not just 100 people who we just grabbed off the street. This is people who work in all levels of business, all sizes, across the whole world. So these are genuine trends, and some of them are quite kind of wow. I mean, I think number 6 we'll get to. I was just like, really? But then when you actually think about where we've been in the last couple of years, it all kind of resonates. So hopefully that's what we're going to talk about today. Some thought leadership around hybrid and what the future of that means for people in work.
So it's interesting. I mean, we've been sort of forced into this with the whole COVID thing, and people having to evacuate the office. But it's brought that step change, and clearly there is an inevitability around hybrid work. And again, business leaders are having to bring major changes in their organisation. Again, talk to us about that piece of the research first.
Okay, so that's in fact perfect segue. So trend number 1 is the inevitability of hybrid work, and this has kind of got some key factors. So we keep this up for a few minutes. I think 66% of leaders saying that their company is planning for space redesign around hybrid work. Now, that is 2/3 of all business leaders are actually thinking about how they modernize that place of work and how work happens. And again, this lovely segue to things like Crestron Flex and other amazing technology that Crestron make. But it's actually a small investment now will yield long-term benefits in the future, and then it's kind of how we actually make that capability for employees to stay flexible, because this is the thing that kind of is coming out from this report post-pandemic. 67% of employees, they want in-personal meetings, but then they also want collaboration. So it's kind of that juxtaposition between, am I going to come to the office? When I come to the office, is the office going to be better or worse than the experience I have at home? We've all got used to like how things are at home, and we all get quite kind of into our little caves, and kind of we get used to that level of technology. But actually the office has got to be a destination for people to go to actually still get work done, and it's actually got to yield the same productivity, which is again something we're going to talk about a little bit later on, as what's expected from any location. So it's all about people and place, and making sure that the right things are in place for both of those those situations.
It is interesting. Again, people have made those investments. I think we were talking last week, about people who are still using inbuilt cameras on laptops, and it's like, why, if you're turning up, if you're representing your brand, whether it be, Crestron or whoever, any major brand, why wouldn't turn up to a physical meeting in a scruffy old pair of jeans and not done your hair? Why would you come out looking fuzzy and out of focus and sounding terrible? I think it's the same thing. You want to represent yourself and your brand in a really high quality.
Well, I was just thinking the Atlantic Blue Marlin Co. Really pleased with the fact that I'm wearing this scruffy old t-shirt to do this video cast. So good job there. But no, you're exactly right. That actual experience that you're giving, like, again, it's not just the experience that you're getting, it's the experience that you're giving other people. And that's true whether you're in your office using your camera, or whether you're actually going into the office and then they've not got the right meeting room equipment. And we've all been in that meeting. Hey, it takes 10 minutes to log on. You're kind of like looking at the wrong screen. People are logging in with their laptop, and then you get the audio feedback at the same time. But that stuff just is happening right now on huge scale, and everyone's pissed off with the kind of the quality of that experience. And how do we go and make sensible decisions about how what that long-term inevitability of what that looks like? Is there less infrastructure? Is there less premises, but then higher quality premises? Will works, finance look a bit different towards kind of the benefits they give to home employees? Because again, these are all questions that companies need to ask and think about how they actually then provide for their employees to get that amazing experience, and their customers ultimately. So it's all like, now is the time to think about it, and it's not going away.
And it's interesting. So, we've always sort of seen with kind of video and collaboration, we used to, in my history, we've all done like big telepresence systems, which were always the kind of solution for the CEO, the CXO, the CFO, and the actual worker bees never got access to those tools, because it was all about, saving their cost of their first class and business class flights, and that's what justified the solution. But now, again, this is for the masses, or for the many, not for the few. What kind of trends came out of the survey around the equitability and the accessibility of this to the whole staff?
Well, actually, the second point is that it's still not very equitable. So, again, although yes, people aren't flying first class anymore because they're all doing their meetings on Teams. What we're seeing is actually the second fact is that business leaders are faring better than their employees. So when you look across kind of all of these different segmentations that we've kind of pulled out there, you can actually see that there is a weighting towards the thriving side of things actually being, business leaders who have got that great tech and having that, better experience. They're doing really well. But then when you actually just go back to the graph really quickly, when you look at actually those, for example, Gen Zs, people who are single, let's think about that for a second. So you've been in lockdown, you're on your own, you've got less kind of people to talk to, a lot of your social interaction is only through your PC, and actually you've probably not been given the right equipment at home to then have those great meetings. That's kind of a real concerning kind of area for people where actually that needs to be considered a lot more, I think, by businesses, is kind of people's personal circumstances. And it's not just for the people at the high end of the company. 37% of employers are saying that their employees are asking that they're asking too much, in terms of that kind of feeling of struggling. It's taking a lot out of people. So I think there is consideration, like a personal consideration within the trends that we need to look at, Neil. It's not as simple as who's the top dog in the company and they should get all of the the goods. I need the whole business to function. I need everybody to feel like they're invested. I need to make sure that I actually understand that what my employees struggles, and there's just a little bit of empathy, which actually all of these kind of facts kind of allude to. There is a very, very empathetic kind of under trend through these stats. So we move to part 3 or facts 3. This is kind of, the empathy is kind of pushed down a little bit, I think, because what we're actually seeing is people are doing a lot more productivity, and actually people are exhausted, and certainly I feel like that when I jump off of a day literally sitting in front of my screen, back to back phone calls where you often don't even have a time to go to the wee, or a personal break or whatever it is. You need to, you have to almost apologize for leaving your desk to go and grab a sandwich.
It's bonkers, isn't it?
Well, this is, so we're actually doing more on paper, and often we kind of need to have the ability to say no to stuff. I wish when Neil called me, I should have said no. No, but I think the thing is, actually, there's an immediacy to this work because it's all digital, because everybody can see when you're online. You've got a little green tick next to you. And that 50% of people are saying that they respond to a Teams chat within 5 minutes or less. That's because when I see someone that's green online, I'm like, well, they're not doing anything, because they're green.
So got the feet up. They're watching YouTube.
Yeah, like there's this almost demanding.
They're waiting for my message to come through.
But this is it. Like it's that instant kind of punch out to somebody, get the information back. Certainly, I've had 1 or 2 bosses who feel that their messages are more prioritized than everybody else's. But you kind of have to have that self-control and self-awareness that actually, just because people are online, hang on a second, this person is online at 11 o'clock at night. Doesn't mean they're working. They're probably just, trying to squeeze stuff in and do, like, people are doing more longer. The commute has disappeared. And actually what's happened when the commute's disappeared is that we've replaced that with more working hours. Which all of this kind of doesn't necessarily feel good for the employee. So, I think there's, how do companies put policies in place? How do they make sure that people aren't going to exhaust themselves and burn themselves out? These are all things that absolutely need to be thought about, Neil.
I was going to say, so I very, very, whenever I've had meetings with Microsoft is very good, actually. There's always that old trend of, like, meetings are an hour long, and even if they're a half-hour meeting, we'll stretch them out to be an hour, because that's just how things have been in the past. But recently I've seen from Microsoft that they've been scheduled 45-minute meetings. I don't know if that was a move from Microsoft, that then you had that 15-minute window in between your next one at the top of the hour. And again, I saw that and was very gracious of that from, let's say, Microsoft making that change, because if you were in an office, you wouldn't be able to get from meeting room 1 to meeting room 2 instantaneously as you can from Teams meeting 1 to Teams meeting 2. So the fact that you've got that kind of walking room or virtual walking room between your next meeting to be able to gather your thoughts, have a cup of coffee, take a breath, check your emails, look at your IMs and all the rest of it, I think that was, as I say, something that I saw quite early on from Microsoft, and I thought that was a really good move. So yeah, it is a real challenge, I think, from a fatigue point of view of people going from one virtual meeting back to back to back.
Yeah, no, and I'm talking about sort of Microsoft's big corporate engine from that perspective, and they do think about kind of how do we optimize this for our employees, and there is a recognition that actually you need to give time back to people so that they can have those water cooler moments that you would normally have. You think about kind of a normal meeting face to face. You would often go and grab a coffee before you even start. That first few minutes, that doesn't happen. It's like bang, straight into the meeting now. And so it's a little bit more. Kind of immediate. But actually, that consideration piece, I think, is any company needs to probably think about again how they allow for that for their employees.
Yeah, and I guess the one thing about employees is the different demographics of employees. We're a little bit longer in the tooth of our careers, but there's been a lot of new generations coming into the workforce during the pandemic, and obviously they've not had that experience of the traditional face-to-face meeting for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. They're coming in and they are more kind of fed by the instantaneous kind of social media and things happening. How is this affecting the new generations coming into the workforce?
So if we think about the fourth fact, which is all about Gen Zs actually, and that younger workforce, they've spent less time in the workforce, right? So they don't necessarily have the same longer relationships that people have been able to lean on during the pandemic. So 60% of Gen Z, so ages between 18 and 25, are saying they are surviving or they're flat out. There's like there was much higher stress in that kind of age group. I think partly because, again, they haven't necessarily built up that sort of muscle around the relationships because the length of time they're there, but a lot of them are kind of new into the workforce and starting in the workforce for the first time, and it's I think incredibly hard for anybody to have started a new role in a new company during the last couple of years, and I'm really hoping that. Well, I'm just hoping that if the pandemic has taught us anything with this whole hybrid thing, is again when and where we can actually mix with people and how we can re-energize that kind of workforce, that whole new workforce, and how they can get the most out of using technology to counteract this kind of challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, they are a different age, and they've got different ways of working and different styles of working to the more traditional boomers and to Gen X. And again, the technology and the way in which they'll embrace technology will be different. They're much more driven by these things than traditional telephony or from using their PC. They're going to drive everything from a mobile, and they're probably more likely to want to be mobile and on the move as well. So again, it's a real interesting challenge as we look to embrace hybrid and these different demographics and different requirements that they're going to have when we build out the workforce. Now, go on.
No, I was going to say that leads us to kind of being siloed in teams, because if you think about, and that's the fifth fact, and I feel like I'm sort of jumping through these a little bit, but actually when you think about how, again, these new people to the workforce, they don't have the big community. And because they don't have the big community, they're actually going onto calls, talking to people, and then getting off and then going to the next call. So we're actually finding that we're working in smaller groups, smaller one-to-one groups, but actually things are less personal and people are feeling more siloed, and it becomes almost like a little bit like a work echo chamber. So again, these are things that we really, really need to be careful of. How do we use the technology in a good way, but then also think about the social piece of it, and then also how that brings in the return to work, team building days, going for a drink afterwards to the pub, like how do we make these things, that's important, Neil.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like how do we make sure that we actually still keep this in the modern way of work?
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is kind of like my sad fact. So if we jump through to fact 6,
go on.
I'm not going to do this now, but I think 1 in 6 people have cried with a coworker over the last year or so. I just think, and obviously it's higher in some than others. So obviously, healthcare has, really been a challenge, but actually not just thinking about COVID and that kind of thing. You're in your home, you're in your safe space. And actually, it's something as simple as, your technology not working, a really important meeting. These are things that actually, I think, people are being much more human. And then I think there's also within that the thing that we mentioned before, that underlying trend of empathy. I think people need to be much more empathetic to their fellow employees, because, you don't have an IT department at home. Things are going to go wrong. I've got some builders out there, and I'm dreading them sticking their head through
The hammer drill come in.
I'm like, no, don't do it. I'm doing a live chat.
Teams has got great noise suppression. Don't worry, it's all good.
Yeah, but and if I haven't got blurred background on, so like genuinely, he could pop his head around the corner at any second. So these kind of things are all concerns that we have, and actually, I think we just need to be more accepting of those things.
Yeah.
And I suppose. Sorry, Neil.
I was going to say, can you remember that fantastic BBC interview where there was the chap and the kid then ran in, and the kind of nanny then ran in, and or the wife ran in and grabbed the child, and all this was going on in the background. And you were kind of like, back then it was kind of, you kind of thought, oh, it's so unacceptable that this person's family could come in whilst he's on a video call. But now it's like, the dog comes in, the cat comes in, the kids come in. It's like, it's acceptable. And as you say, there is that challenge where we have a lot more on our plates. Maybe we've got someone who's sheltering at home. Maybe they're ill. Maybe you have to go and pick your kids up from school halfway through the day, and then you've got to look after them plus take your calls. Balancing that kind of work-life balance. When you're in the office, you're kind of untouchable. You're miles away from the home, and you're miles away from that, and it's you can't deal with that. But when you're at home and all this stuff is going around you, it is a lot more challenging, and there is a lot more pressure. And I think people will get more stressed of having all of these different elements going on during the day, which is going to be really challenging for a lot of people.
No, absolutely. I think also within this as well, there's the kind of the thought process around, people, where do you get people from to do like we can evolve how we actually work as businesses, and actually there's a real opportunity, I think, to have different talent coming from different places as well. So if we think about that from a positive perspective, I think somebody I was talking to actually recently they've got a small business, and they've always had a nightmare getting somebody to do their basically working for them like a receptionist and doing their admin and that kind of stuff. They actually now in a situation where they have somebody working for them. I think they're based in Basingstoke, and the person working for them is in Birmingham. All the bees. And they job share that person's time remotely. They have them 2 days a week, so they can afford them. They're not working in the same town and city, but the admin's getting all done. This kind of concept of global talent, actually, and that's a very small business, but the same thing is true for any business. You can go out and get people to work in the right kind of area as you normally would, but actually you can get people to do the right job and the right thing for your company or your business, which I think are, those kind of things are exciting. So from that regard, those are the trends really that I wanted to talk about today. Hopefully they were of interest. We will make sure that we give you the link to share with all your Crestronites. Is that what you are? You're a Crestronite?
Yeah, I guess so. But this is global, so it's not just limited to Crestron. Our competitors and the world, we're trying to obviously solve problems for people and companies and businesses, and being thought leading in this information. And it is a free. We're going to put the link in the description. Tom's going to send me over the deck or the link that we can get the deck to you. So if you want to go into more detail or to share these or use these when you're looking at your hybrid working or return to office strategies for your businesses, we'll give you this information. Again, it's great that Microsoft have put this together and are giving this information out, obviously providing the tools to allow you to do this work, but then also being able to provide you the information to do that. So absolutely fantastic. And thank you for coming on and walking us through these 6 points of us today, Tom. Where can people hook up with you? Where do you hang out these days? Are you a LinkedIn? Of course, you're a LinkedIn. Are you a Twitterite? Where do you kind of hang out? Where can people hook up with you?
LinkedIn is probably the best place to get hold of me. I'm not on all of the socials, just the ones that add value to my life.
Very, very good. Well, thank you ever so much for coming on and joining us on this episode of CresTV. And thank you all for tuning in. Hopefully you found a lot of this information useful. And again, we are trying to not just, bombard you with information on the great Crestron products, but also to provide you information around our partners and also thought-leading information that allows you to be able to build your plans and to enhance the information that we put out. We do this every week. It is free. It is on YouTube. Hit subscribe, hit hit link, tell your friends, give us a thumbs up, share it out, and tell people on LinkedIn, Twitter, and wherever you hang out, maybe in the pub. And I'll see you on next week's CresTV. Thanks.